My fellow Amazonians, this is Dr. Ayaba. Good morning and good afternoon to every one of our citizens across the globe and in the battlefields and trenches of our homeland. Um, Today, I have come with a couple of reflections on a series of issues that are going on. And I usually make these reflections so that we have a level of understanding where we are, what we are doing, and what is going on. In liberation struggles, there are a lot of happenings, and it requires leadership to always explain those happenings let the as to allow the people to be focused on the task of our liberation. In the past weeks, we've seen a lot of things, including civilian population rising in certain areas, in Gi, killing a general, in Oku, and in Bangolang. These are stress moments that require some level of explanation to our people. We have also watched Amazonian chiefs make a visit to France. I would like to talk about all of these things. What has happened in Guy is totally unacceptable. We know that um, there are bad actors in our struggle whose actions, including harassment, seizure of property, exercise of unwarranted authority in villages, has created some level of distrust between the population and our soldiers. And we also know that the structural deficiencies in terms of command and control in certain areas uh, have been responsible for these distrust. But it is totally unacceptable for the population to not only harass, attack, but kill a soldier who has dedicated his life for the defense of our homeland. This is an act of murder, and I have asked our Supreme General to investigate. This area is not under the control of the Amazonian Defense Forces, which I command, but what happens to any Amazonian soldier on the ground is a concern to my leadership, because what they do in areas, even in areas that we do not control, is important in our overall national liberation strategy. The population has an opportunity to report acts of harassment or acts of seizure of property to our anti-kidnapping czar, DDC Kapo. And we will look into those things, whether in areas which we exercise control or not. In recognizing some of the deficiencies of our forces, we set up the anti-kidnapping squad overseen by DDC Kapo. And we have taken steps to reduce kidnapping to a level that we think with further action will be acceptable. In times of war, these actions will continue. There will be opportunists, bad actors. Our spaces will be infiltrated by the defeated enemy to undertake actions that will create a rift between our forces and our population. And I encourage our population in different areas to report discontent to DDC Capo. In the coming weeks, we will be submitting for review a structural plan that will help bridge the gap between civilian population and our forces and ensure collective responsibilities in those areas. This is not a resistance that should be undertaken only by our fighters. It's a collective resistance, and we encourage collective responsibilities, collective effort in ensuring that areas under dynamic control move to static control, so that we can now engage in some level of building cohesion and a sense of community life, which is critical for civilian population. We hope that the introduction of these structural changes will help build trust between our population. But it must also be known that any population that is instrumentalized, infiltrated, and used to attack our forces, we will respond to it. For 60 years, we have been brutalized and killed by a rapacious regime. And we've risen up against that system. In the interim, we are not going to have a perfect transition, but we think it's unacceptable for any population to side with the enemy, enable the actions of the enemy, and to attack and kill Amazonian fighters. It is totally unacceptable in times of war. And let the population that is responsible know that we are going to identify the perpetrators of this crime and we are going to get them arrested. The second issue I would like to talk about is the movement of Amazonian chiefs and funds to France. This is a sacrilege, not only for Amazonia, but for the black race and for the continent. For more than 60 years, some level of independence was given through blood to many African countries. Patriots like Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, who rose up and espoused the notion of Pan-Africanism that could bring the black race together within the continent to strengthen their foundation for economic prosperity and political collaboration, were murdered. We've gotten the Sekou Tourés and others who have stood up against, especially France's neo-colonial policies that has been responsible for the death of millions of black people and Africans in particular. We have gotten in recent months coup d'etats taking place in countries where it is believed France's actions have been responsible for acts of terrorism and economic pillaging. These brave actions have been to secure, real independence for countries within the continent. And for Amazonian chiefs to walk over these efforts and the dead bodies of patriots murdered before, back to the country that has been responsible for all of these acts of death and killings and destruction, to beg for the recolonization of their own country is a sacrilege. It's a sacrilege which must be condemned and actions taken to ensure that these men, these colonial puppets, these individuals who have disgraced not only Amazonia, the black race and the continent, are held accountable for their action. African countries need true independence, political and economic, to have the right to make decisions for their social, economic and political future consistent with the dreams and aspirations of their people. African countries have the right to form monetary, financial, economic, and political unions to create opportunities for their people. African countries have the right to exploit their resources to develop their own countries and create opportunities for their people. We cannot live in a continent where there is neither political independence, puppets are installed who change constitutions, brutalize people, loot countries, and save these loot in foreign accounts for Western interests. Our fight in Amazonia is not only a fight for the freedom of the Amazonian people. It is a fight that embodies the dreams and aspirations of many peoples across the continent who have never known peace, who've seen opportunities, of have hope, or having even hope that they will have a better day tomorrow. And any African who still espouses and goes across oceans to lick the boots of these colonialists who continue to parade and create impunity within the continent must be excommunicated, not only from Amazonia but from the continent. And we must continue to educate our people that the independence we strive and fight for is not independence that is going to be micromanaged from another capital. We want to establish institutions that are truly ours, owned by us, a reflection of our own political realities. We will not have clone states that can be overthrown through individuals hired and sponsored and implanted in our countries to continuously perpetuate the colonial doctrine of domination and subjugation that has never benefited our peoples. And I want you people to remain steadfast. But you must recall that these are not the first traitors that we will have. The concept of enabling colonialism is not an Amazonian issue. Lest you forget, King Edward VIII of England was a traitor. This was a man who became king of England, I think in 1936, abdicated in the same year to marry his mistress, but had provided enough information to Germany to bomb England, to bomb his own country, to come to the peace table. King Edward had also provided enough information that led to the capitulation of France. Lest you also forget that Prime Minister Chamberlain was a Nazi apologist, someone who thought appealing and begging Adolf Hitler was going to raise him to a higher height. King Edward even thought, he could be brought back to the throne through the effort of Adolf Hitler. So when these chiefs travel across oceans over the dead bodies of patriots, long dead, and to go and invite these colonialists to come back to our state, you should take solace in the fact that when France capitulated, Hitler installed Pétain, as a Nazi apologist to work for Germany over France. He needed a de Gaulle who had taken refuge in Gabon to rise up to the occasion to ensure that France resisted. In the United Kingdom, he needed a Winston Churchill to summon the courage, to summon the Brits to fight in the high seas, on land and in the air for their true freedom. Amazonia will not be the first country where you have these enablers. In Algeria, you had more enablers than patriots. We're going to lose territory. When Indonesia invaded East Timor, the East Timorese resisted. They fought hard. Indonesia got enough weapons from the United States and pushed the freedom fighters to the outskirts of their own country. Their resistance was crumbled, but East Timorese kept fighting until they got their independence. My fellow Amazonians, I know when you doubt yourself, when you are demoralized and confused, you find scapegoats. You think about who to blame. When a people fighting for their freedom become demoralized, they rise up, they reinforce, they fight harder. I will not blame Amazonians sometimes for being confused and demoralized. The reason is simple. You so badly want your freedom that any obstacle to that confuses you and demoralizes you. You shouldn't. Impediments to freedom is a natural occurrence in the struggle for freedom across time and space. In the United States struggle for freedom, less than 50% of Americans believe in their own freedom. In Amazonia, more than 90% of our people believe in their independence. You should know, and you must embrace difficulties as part of this liberation life cycle. And always stop looking for excuses and scapegoats. Somewhere I read, somebody wrote that Ayaba has failed. They thought the problems the Sakos were having, I was going to take the opportunity. The same thing that when Siseko was kidnapped, someone wrote, they thought Ayaba was going to, this was his moment. It has always been my moment. We shall not ravish on the spoils of others, on the misfortune of others. We provide leadership that everyone can benefit from. Every patriot can benefit from. We build an ideological base for our liberation. That is not only for the Amazonian Governing Council. That is for all Amazonians. We identify and name those who stand to disrupt our independence so that it is easy for Amazonians to quantify them, to identify them, and to deal with them. I ask Amazonians, I ask all of you to know and to recall what I said in 2017. It was not out of the blues. A struggle for freedom is not a walk in a park. Our journey from Cameroon to Amazonia is not going to be easy. During the 60 years of our colonization and subjugation, Cameroon created numerous centers of power in Amazonia who have and continue to benefit from our oppression. They continue to enable Cameroon to continue to perpetuate the system of curtailment and deprivation and subjugation so that they will continue to be recognized, to be accepted, and to benefit. We are not going to eliminate all of those obstacles. Even when we finally sing our anthem in Boya, the international system, Cameroon will still continue to build centers of power within Amazonia to advance its own national security and economic interests. The international system will even want to implant leaders in Amazonia that will serve the new colonial curtailment doctrine that has existed in the continent since time immemorial. People who succeed are people who accept that in struggles, in our individual struggles for survival, in our collective struggles, there will be difficulties and are able to identify those difficulties, take measures to ensure that they can overcome those difficulties. We're going to lose battles. We're going to lose our sons and daughters, our mothers. I had said from the beginning, it is not going to be a walk in a park. And all Amazonians must be ready, must be prepared. I know I have always been at the center of everything. My name has become a currency for everyone who wants to pour out their frustration, rise to the next pedestal. But, like in the story of Batman, as a man, I am flesh, I am blood. I can be ignored. I can even be destroyed. But as a symbol of our resistance, I am incorruptible. I cannot be altered. I am not going to accept shortcuts. I am not going to proclaim myself. I'm going to do what I can do for the Amazonian people. I'm going to provide the leadership that I can provide for the Amazonian people. I'm not going to stop anyone from doing what they can do, but I'm going to be an obstacle to anyone or groups of persons who think they can provide shortcuts to our continuous enslavement. My fellow Amazonians, our resistance is firm. The devotion in our forces is strong. The resilience in the majority of our people is strong. The determination of the Amazonian people to end Cameroon's tyranny and arrogance is unshakable. I look across Bui. I see forces coming together. The other day, the regime attacked General Maddock. Major General Capo of the ADF instructed General No Mercy to mobilize his forces and go for a backup. And he did. That's the kind of spirit we want to see. That we recognize each other in our diversity. I look at Mezam, I see the strength of the different brigades, from Bafut into Mankon and different areas, Chomba and other places in Mezam. I look at Momo, see how the forces have come together, and I see the determination in their actions. I see how they are struggling with limited resources to defend the independence that we restored, to protect the lives of our people. These men have left their homes. These men have sacrificed their own livelihood without a pay, without applaud, without a stage to proclaim their heroism in the defense of our freedom. They are mortals. They will make mistakes. They will commit some crimes. But we must understand the circumstances under which they fight. We can watch what is happening in Ukraine. We can look at other conflicts. We can see international mobilization for support. In ours, we provide very little. We provide 10% of what is required on a monthly basis to support these brave heroes in the defense of our land. And I enjoin everyone to rededicate, to recommit. We aren't going back. It's not a journey where you can simply at one stage look back and say, I'm going to summon the courage to walk right back into the pit of hell that I have left from, because the journey ahead seems uncertain and difficult. The compass you need is that which has been used by others before us. They also walk this journey. They look back and watch the field littered with the bodies of patriots dead and wounded. They looked ahead, there was uncertainty. George Washington walked on. The Mandelas refused to commit to non-violence when the brutal system that curtailed his own freedom was predicated on violence. The Eritreans looked ahead. After fighting for 5 years, they never gave up. It took them 25 more years to reach the promised land. It's going to be difficult, but we have prevailed with nothing. And if we simply come together, summon our courage, contribute our own quarter where we can, we are going to deliver a new state for our people. We are going to deliver hope for millions far beyond our own shores. We must have shamed those tyrants who held us hostage for so many years. And those nincompoops walk over the dead bodies of patriots back to the center of colonialism to beckon on sad history to revisit our shores. Amazonia is free. Amazonia is free. We have a responsibility as a people, now and in the future, under the worst circumstances we can ever imagine, to preserve that freedom and to defend it. God bless you all.